Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Well, we have a perspective today, and we might have a couple of personalities if we could just kind of pull it out of them, Judith K. I'm going to let you introduce our guest shortly. First and foremost, I want to hold forth for about 15 or 20 minutes on a kudo. Reverend Quine's Father Mark knows that we always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo for somebody in the community or some organization or so forth. That's kind of a special one to me. If you see your neighbor, Father Mark, Dr. John Wahab, wandering around in a quandary, it's not that he's just fine, but he's trying to figure out how he's going to get along without his aide-de-camp, nurse extraordinaire, Marcia Angelier. Marcia's she's gonna hang it up. And she's earned her retirement in spades. She's going to be missed. Happily for us and those who are patients out there at Family Medical, she has a clone in her daughter, Jennifer Shaw, 100% clone. Seriously, Marcia, you've earned your retirement. You have done a yeoman's job there for Dr. Wahab and his patients at Family Medical. So we salute you. Enjoy your retirement, and maybe we can slip into Spirited Republic someday and celebrate your retirement. So that's my kudo, and it's a personal one because the Angelier family, the Gossett family, go back probably 92 years.
At least.
Yes, at least. Yes. So why don't we get right down and talk about what we're going to talk about. Is this a holiday season or something?
Oh, isn't it just?
Let's just talk about
And our guests this morning, I would think this would be about their busiest season. Our guests are the pastor at First Presbyterian Church here in Lincoln, Adam Quine, and our other guest is from the other end of that block. His first name is Father, and his last name is Mark, and he's at the Episcopalian Church. And we're very happy to have you with us today. It's good of you to take time out. Is this the most intense period of the church year?
Go ahead.
Well,
is that the old pass the buck trick?
I'm glad the first time we're having
it definitely feels like, especially with a thunderstorm outside. Between Advent and the culmination of it and Easter, it's Holy Week. These are the two busiest times for most mainline pastors like Mark and I.
I should suspect.
Father Mark, sorry.
That's fine.
Well, that's right. He'll call anything, just don't call him too late to the bar.
Okay.
Adam, you've had services at our church that we haven't had in the past. For instance, the Tays service and Blue Christmas. I'd like to ask you to explain those two, and then Father Mark to tell us what, oh bless you, what his services are that are in addition.
Sure. The first one you mentioned, the Taizé service, comes out.
I said it wrong.
Tays, Taizé,
potato.
Right, exactly.
It's in the eyes of the beholder.
Right, you're from Minnesota, so it's okay.
Forgive me.
The Taizé services, ours that we have at First Presbyterian Church, is an adaptation from the Taizé community in France, monastic community that provides worship service centered on the reading of Scripture, reading of Psalms specifically, and chanting. And so our Taizé services, they're just like that. A few readings. I incorporate poetry and writings from those who are far better with words than I am. And it's 40 minutes. You don't even have to stand up. You get to sit down the whole time, which is...
That's the appealing factor.
Yeah, right. Do y'all have 3 movements in worship? Sitting, standing, and kneeling? So yes, Presbyterians, we only have 2. And then
we call it Episcopalian aerobics.
Oh, okay. Okay. So y'all are... Yeah, we are more frozen than you. And then the Blue Christmas service... It's also called Blue Christmas or the Longest Night service, and it's usually held on the longest night of the year, which was the 21st. The 21st.
Day before yesterday.
Yeah, and it's a time for the church community to make space for the very real presence of grief and sorrow and sadness that comes with the holiday season. I shared this story this past year at our Blue Christmas service, where I remember it was the first Christmas after my grandfather died, and I remember as we were lighting candles during Silent Night and I was playing with the wax, I looked up and saw my mom crying, and I thought, how can you be crying when we're going to go open up presents after this? What are you thinking? And then it dawned on me that this was the first Christmas without her dad, and that moment always stuck with me. And so to create space and give space to say it's okay to feel blue, as I wrote about, Elvis Presley made the song Blue Christmas quite famous a few years ago, before my time. And
it's all before your time.
Yeah. And so the last couple years we've been able to again just make the space for people to come and say, we know the season's joyful, but some of us are experiencing Christmas for the first time, the holiday season the first time, alone or in different life situations.
And in a serious note, some losses come just before the season.
Exactly.
And it's so intimate and so close to them. And it's very, I think I'll just pass the baton before I get carried away here.
That's kind of a widespread phenomena, though, in the church, that people then feel guilty because they're feeling down, depressed even in some cases, when they're supposed to be feeling joyous. So then you think, well, what's the matter with me? I'm doing this all wrong. Have you experienced that with your parishioners, Father Mark?
Oh, yeah. And not quite to the extent that Adam has done, but I always make a point during the sermons in Advent, the month before Christmas, that it's a time of expectation, but I also make a point too to say, but it's okay not to feel happy. If something is, this time of year, it's starting to get cold, bills pile up, loved ones are lost, all sorts of things kind of converge on people, and they don't feel happy. As you say, they're supposed to feel happy. There's, Christmas carols on the radios from Halloween on, and you just get overwhelmed and you get down, and I want to point out that that's okay.
You talk about from Halloween on, and this is most certainly true. I was involved for a number of years with Abraham Lincoln Memorial Hospital and the volunteer and special services, which included the gift shop. Well, the story is there in merchandising. If I've got $10 I'm going to spend on a Christmas decoration, a little whatnot for my house, Wally World's got their stuff out, If I don't put mine out, then you're going to take your $10 bill and go to Wally World. So, I don't know, it's got to be a two-sided thing, but it's got to make the both of you a little unhappy.
Commercialism is what you're talking about, Judith, just plain old straight
out and flat out, it's commercialism.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword, because part of that commercialism does help make the season brighter. Part of the commercialism does help people recognize, wait a minute, there are people who don't have. So the commercialism
that's important.
Isn't always a negative in my mind. Yes, do I get tired of hearing Christmas carols on my favorite radio station, starting around Halloween? I do. Do I wish that we had more of a build up to Christmas as opposed to an explosion? Yes, I do. But if I want to get mad about stuff, I'm going to save it for something else.
Yeah, it'd be what it be, I guess. How about you, Adam?
To be honest and frank, it's annoying. And I think for me, what would kind of redeem it is if stores would such as the big box stores, if they would, in addition to their Christmas ornaments, sell purple and pink candles alongside, because
For your Advent.
for Advent. And that's one reason why we have Taizé services on during Advent, is just to give that space that there is a build up to Christmas. There is a season before, and unfortunately, outside of mainline churches, that reality is kind of forgotten. It's not there. I mean, churches light candles, but then they go out and start singing their Christmas carols. Well, there's not yet. Let's not rush it. Let's let the anticipation build. Let's really prepare ourselves for what we're celebrating on the 25th. So if they would, again, just on the very end of the Christmas aisle where you can buy Chicago Cubs ornaments, which I'm a little alarmed that there's no Cubs gear in this.
I think that's
Oh,
fair
dear.
alarm, yeah.
No, there's a Cardinals clock right there.
Well, forget them.
Right, well, there's a little blue one here, so that's my only hope. But anyway, if they would, at the end of the aisle, put an Advent option for people to buy, I think that would satisfy
Then you'd be happy.
I would be happy. So
But you talk about the music. The traditional, here I go, old fellow again. Stuck in his ways. The traditional carols that we grew up with as kids, they seem to have lost favor. And I'd vouchsafe to say, and I'd like to be wrong about this, there's no way to prove it, but my guess is if we went out there to Lincoln Community High School and asked 10 kids to sing 2 carols that they know, we might not get but one response if we got that. Now, am I wrong about that in,
Well, you
in that
maybe
perception?
get Grandma run over by a reindeer, but you could have gone out to the high school, for instance, for the Lambs, Lincoln Area
Oh,
Musical
well, that's a
Society
different
concert,
story.
which had beautiful music, and I learned something. I thought by this age I ought to probably
Mark
know
this down,
this.
Jim. She learned
yeah,
something.
make it, make it a big mark. The Coventry Carol, which is one of my favorites. You talk about blue Christmas. I mean, that is absolutely, every time I've heard it since the concert, I've gotten upset because the story behind it is so horrific, as are so many stories in the Bible. I mean, they went out and killed a whole bunch of them. Every time they conquered somebody, they didn't spare the women, the children, the pets, anything. The cows, the whole shooting match went. And the Coventry Carol covers what?
All right.
The
Now,
London bombing.
Huh?
The bombing in Coventry, isn't it?
No, it's when Herod said that everybody under 2
Yeah.
had to die. And this is the lullaby that the mothers are singing to their babies
aren't
who
you proud of her?
died.
She paid strict attention to what was going
Listen,
on.
I tell you, that makes
I'm not
me...
familiar with that one.
Oh, man, I tell you, that just gets me. I have a 2-year-old great-grandson who's the light of my life, and I can't think how bereft one would be. But that's part of history, too.
Well, Padre, you're supposed to learn something new every day. At 92, I just learned something about that. I didn't know about that either.
Oh, I already told you that. You just can't remember.
Was that for the further?
So, Bill, can we take the rest of the day off?
We're done. You and I go home.
Whoa, I tell you, that's a downer. But anyway.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I think you should get a turn. I don't think you've had one yet.
Well, Father Mark, you've been with us
4 years.
4 years now. And I'm sure we haven't taught you very much in those 4 years, but we try. I bet you're a good learner too. Speaking of learning, Adam, you've been with us what, 2.5 years?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Now, gentlemen, when you first came to this famous metropolitan area, what was your immediate impact? What were your immediate thoughts? Other than, God, I've got a job and here I am, what am I going to do? But seriously, don't want to be facetious about this at all. You had an initial impact on the community and its people. Would you care to share that with us?
So I had grown up on a farm in Iowa. So, and lived in Des Moines for a while, lived in
I used to live in Des Moines.
metropolitan, the exurbs of Milwaukee for some time. Small town in central Wisconsin called Stevens Point. So coming to Lincoln with the agricultural emphasis, it was a little bit like coming full circle for me.
Because you went back to a smaller area.
Small, so farming is what I grew up with up until I went to college. So there was that initially it was a bit like, well, I understand this. I've not moved to some place that's just totally foreign to me. And to be frank, there were some other things that weren't so good. Lincoln is a shrinking area. Population is shrinking. Not quickly, but somewhat. And it could use a little sprucing up in places. There's a kind of a feeling of not quite the level of anxiety, but almost resignation to some degree.
Little lethargy where fixing up is concerned?
Just kind of, well, this is our lot in life, and this is the way it is. And so I mean, there were the good and the bad when I came here. Now, as Bill can tell you, that the Episcopal Church has only perfect members in it.
Boy, Adam, is he lucky?
And
a couple of exceptions.
So it was there's a real community there, and so I walked in that community, and even though I was the new kid, I could still be part of it, and that was very special to me.
That's a plus. That's a plus. Yeah. Reverend Quine?
Well, y'all may be have the perfect.
Well, I did say we have some exceptions.
We at the Presbyterian Church, we are the elected.
That's true.
We have the elected folk. Obviously, I grew up in central Illinois, Peoria, and so I, was used to the flatlands and the farms and the et cetera, the lack of diversity, if you will. But I think that was coming from a big city like Louisville, where I did my studies in seminary, and coming back to central Illinois, specifically Lincoln, it was the lack of variety that really kind of shook me. I mean, I could go for some good Indian food, but you can't. There's no Indian food in Lincoln, so you got to go to Springfield, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a comfort to a small town. There's as much as there has its challenges and the realities of small cities kind of decreasing and suburbs growing elsewhere. There is a comfort. There is the sense of community that you can't get in cities, the bigger cities and whatnot. So
there's a bit more of a feel of permanence.
Yes.
Or maybe not permanence, but just longevity.
Right.
That I didn't feel when I lived in other places.
We have a permanence modus operandi here, and it's called honoring sponsors. So if Mr. Ash is ready at the keyboard, he'll switch all the necessary dials and so forth, and we'll go right to the commercials, then we'll come right back. Our guest this morning, Pastor Adam Quine of First Presbyterian Church, and Father Mark Evans of the Episcopalian Church. Go right ahead, James. And right back live in the studios here, WLCN, high on the hill here in Atlanta. Our guest this morning at the Viewpoint program are, as I said earlier, Father Mark Evans of the Episcopal Church here in Lincoln, and Reverend Adam Quine of the First Presbyterian Church. We haven't gotten around to talking much about what is coming up here soon. The Christmas season. We're into the Christmas season. We're about ready to put the plug on that. Perhaps we ought to talk about Luke 2 and maybe get a little serious about what this all means. And as we talked earlier in the program about commercialism, and so many people don't really stop and think for even a second that there's a real reason for Christmas other than supporting the box stores. So perhaps we ought to talk about that just a minute. Who would like to get their feet out of the starting blocks first? Well, we're not into one another.
I'll let you.
I'm finishing
Moving
my
right
coffee.
along.
Yeah, I'll let you.
No dead air, fellas.
So you're asking for commentary on Luke 2 or just Christmas
No,
in general?
Christmas in general, whatever. You take the lead.
So, theologian N.T. Wright has characterized Christmas, the birth of Jesus Christ, Son of God, second person of the Trinity, as God the Father's rescue mission for all humanity. The Father's love is so great that He's willing to sacrifice His only Son for our sakes. To make that happen, that Son had to become man. It wasn't able to be done with a flick of a magic wand. It wasn't able to be done just with a blink of an eye. It had to happen combining heaven, earth, all its holy, all its earthy, combining them, bringing them together, fusing them, and then making that rescue operation happen. God had to become man to save man. God, the holy God, became man to make us holy. And that's the story of Christmas.
That's pretty basic, very quick story on Christmas. Is there a Presbyterian spin on that, Reverend Quine?
Yeah, I mean, that's N.T. Wright. Well done. It's a good name drop there.
There's an affirmation there.
Yeah, no. For the longest time, just the mystery of it all, and what the incarnation means of God taking on flesh, and how unique that is to religion, to stories of faith, of for people, and as much as the birth of Christ, the incarnation meant for salvation, meant for rescuing. I think another important part that comes not necessarily from Reformed theology, but more from Roman Catholic kind of liberation theology and whatnot, is how much the incarnation affirms about humanity. While as Presbyterians really believe in total depravity, and woe is us, we can't be that bad if God became one of us. And who we are as humans, our spirituality, our mentality, but also our, and I hope I can say this word on air, sexuality, is not something that is to be feared or something to be ignored, but it's to be embraced. And the incarnation teaches that. The incarnation affirms creation and affirms us, the entirety of who we are.
At the end of the first chapter, Genesis, there's a verse that tells us that everything that God created was good. And as Adam says, the incarnation, Christmas, reaffirms that. It's all good. We don't use it the way it should be used, but it's all good. And it's meant to be in the image of God. We are meant to be in the image of God. And so, that's I think what Bishop Wright is trying to say, that God had this wonderful creation. He made this, everything that we can see, all that is seen and unseen, as we say in our Nicene Creed. And He wanted to rescue it. He wanted to be what it was meant to be. So He sent His Son to become part of that creation, to redeem it.
And you have to have, well, I say you have to have, I suppose the PC police will be out calling on, we'll take our number off the phone, Jim. PC police will be calling up, you can't talk about that. Well, we will talk about it too, as long as Judas and I can come up here. But you have to have a basic core belief. And that can spin off from whatever it spins off to, but you have to get back always to the basic core belief that this is what happened. And without that anchor, you kind of adrift at sea, without your sea anchor being full of water. Mm-hmm. And you see so much of it today where I don't know how many people on the street, as you go up and down the street or walk into the box stores, exemplify that core belief in what they're doing on earth here. Is that a little jaundiced viewpoint, perhaps?
If you want to really get jaundiced, there might be people in the pews who don't believe.
Well, there's that to be said. I hadn't thought about that. Does that get you?
But it was said by one of the 12, I believe, Lord, help mine unbelief. So apparently that's a very human thing.
It is.
It's a tough thing
it's very hard to get to
wrap your head around it.
It's impossible for us to wrap our minds around this.
Right.
Okay. Bill, you talked a little bit about, people have to have a core belief. Well, those of us who are Christians believe that it's true whether or not you believe it, or you don't have to believe it for it to be true.
Amen.
Well, there's a statement. You do not have to believe it for it to be true. I hadn't thought of it that way.
It's still true whether you believe it or not.
The Presbyterian take on that would be about the same as it would be, Adam?
Yeah.
I can't define differential equations.
Yes.
But other people smarter than me tell me they work, so I will take this. So they are true even though I can't explain it. They are true even though I don't use them. So the story of God's salvation history in our history is true, whether I believe it or not.
I want to, the word belief and the word believe, I think it's fascinating because in the context which that word is used, I think the reason why people have a hard time with the belief of what Christmas is all about is because that belief rarely takes on flesh. Those who celebrate the incarnation, those who celebrate the birth of Christ and what it means, we often don't do a good enough job of making that real, a very real presence. It's one thing to believe. I mean, sure, help me in my unbelief, or help me believe, and Jesus then says, well, go and do. So if you want to believe who I am, go and do likewise. It's one thing to say Christ is born. It's another thing to go and bring that good news and tell that good news, live that good news. I mean, you can believe all you want, but what good is it if it doesn't penetrate your heart?
The two great commandments: thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. And the second is like unto it: thou shalt love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
Okay. To believe is your head, my mind. But what about your heart, your soul, and your strength? Okay. So, yeah, Pastor Quine is quite correct in saying that belief is not. It's a start, but it's not the whole thing.
You mentioned early on, Father, about all of us feeling more benevolent during the Christmas season. Mm-hmm. And we've done special things at our church. You've done special things at your church. We all kind of put our strength to the test at Christmas time to show that we do care about our fellow man. But what do we do about bringing that into
I care
January?
for man and woman. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, you're being a PC guy. I'm too old for PC.
Not to toot our own horn, but we the Episcopal Church have recognized that, and so we are the Trinity Episcopal Church. So the Feast of the Trinity is the first Sunday after Pentecost. And I don't explain all that, but it happens early summer, May or June. And so what we have done to counter that benevolence that happens at Christmas that overwhelms a number of organizations, they have this feast of money that's showered on them in Christmas time, but come June, it's a little sparse. Things have dried up. That benevolent feeling has ebbed. So we have decided that as part of our celebration of our feast day, that we then invite the people who are recipients of our outreach money to a luncheon that day, and then we give our checks in summer.
Oh, clever.
That's great. That's wonderful. That's very reflective of the Trinity.
Yes.
And it's a relational component.
Am I correct in this assumption, or is it just a personal concern? When we grew up, folks my age, we grew up in pretty stable environments. It was not the frenetic world that it is today. Religion was always an important part, perhaps even an integral part of family lifestyle, family living, and the families went to church on Sundays and so forth. That's gone. Am I correct in that?
Overall, yes. I mean, there isn't the same cultural appropriation of church attendance as there was. The Pew Research numbers showing that the number of people who say they have no religious affiliation at all has gone from a small amount to approaching 20% at this point.
That's very significant.
So they call them the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, not the habit-forming people. But at the same time, church attendance as a percentage of the population has not decreased. Or, no, I should say, church involvement has not decreased. So I think what's happened is that you had a lot of people, you had some people who went to church because it was the right thing to do. The mayor went to the Presbyterian church because
he's smart.
That had a bigger combination.
He's depraved.
Yeah, right.
So, but I mean, you had a certain amount of expectation that was there. That expectation is now no longer normative. So that category of person is not in the church pew on Sunday morning. But at the same time, the involvement is still the same as it was before. So I think what's happened is because the cultural expectation is no longer there, the people who were nominal attenders, not members, but attenders, just aren't there anymore. Has it changed the church? Yes, the pews are emptier, but it probably hasn't changed the life of the church, of any individual church, that much.
But there's an economic factor in it. It costs money to have a church door open, you know, whether it's a little small church or a cathedral. It costs a lot of money to keep those buildings open. Perhaps
They don't pay those expensive liturgy, too.
Yeah, right.
But that becomes a problem for churches all over. Now, our community is very, very lucky. We have this many denominations that we have. All these churches that we enjoy having in our community, they contribute to the fiber of the community in many ways.
Yes.
Not the least of which is economics. There are a lot of folks that get helped by their church or another church that we know nothing about. So I just wondered if that factor weighs in as you go about your daily business trying to administer to your fellow church members.
The economic?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a growing reality. I mean, as much as, while I agree with everything that Mark just said, one of the issues that churches face is we can't deny the fact that the demographics are changing in a lot of the mainline churches, that young families aren't as great as they once were. And a lot of that has to do with, speaking to my denomination, the Presbyterian Church USA, us holding on to a worship format when the church was at its peak in the 1950s and 1960s, when the culture has changed, when the family has changed, and we're not changing with it. I've said that word 3 times. I hope God doesn't strike me with a lightning bolt or something.
Hope his aim is well.
Right. But exactly. But one of the realities is, and this is one thing that I learned in school, was for every one of the matriarchs or patriarchs that dies, it takes 4 or 5 people in their 20s and 30s to make up their giving. So we're speaking directly to their finances. And that's a very real factor in the life of many churches. Is we have a faithful older community and we have a faithful younger community, but the demands and the giving practices are different, and so the church is kind of facing that reality that when the wisest among us complete their baptisms, it takes a huge impact both in the life of the church, but also in its finances. And as much as people don't like to talk about money in church, you have to. And it is what it is.
You can talk about money, you just don't worship money.
Exactly.
And we haven't, I think we threw the baby out with the bathwater once upon a time when we said, well, we're not going to talk about money because that makes people uncomfortable. Well,
so it does.
So find a different way to bring it up, but it has to be talked about.
Right.
Yeah, but in a real world, I have to pay my bill for heat and my bill for water, and on the other end of it, the sewer bill to carry the water away. So do you. So it's just an obvious thing. It's not a big shock. Right?
Right.
Can I say something as a shameless great-grandmother?
You go right ahead, and then the clock's going to tick on us.
I know that. I have a great-granddaughter who, when she was about 5, was down the basement with her grandma, and she saw a nativity in the Christmas things, and she wanted it, of course. And Cass said, no. She said, I put that out for Christmas, but she said, I have another one upstairs that I'll give you, which she did, and Adeline said, oh, downstairs is the Christmas Jesus, and this is the everyday Jesus. And maybe we ought to all think about the everyday Jesus. She was only 4, but she kind of had it there.
Hey, I think we're glad we gave you those last 30 seconds on that. That is very profound, and we thank you, Judith Kay. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate you sharing your busy times with us. This isn't like it was the middle of summer right now for you, so we thank you very much. Charles Dickens, old Charlie, you remember Charlie Dickens. He said, I will honor Christmas in my heart, but I will try to keep it there all the year long. Thank you very much, Mark and Adam.
And